Welcome to the last, one of the last sessions, Global Azure 2021, hosted by the PaaS Regional Chapter Group Münsterland. And I'd say, welcome, Sandro, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. Let me share the screen, and please let me know if you see my screen.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, let me this. So, first of all, thank you to allow me to be here again. For those who doesn't know me, my name is Sandro Pereira. I'm head of integration at DevScope, a Portuguese company, consultant company in Portugal, based in Porto. I'm an Azure MVP from the last 10 years. I've been a Beanstalk MVP, an integration MVP, and now I'm an Azure MVP. You have my contacts there. I'm a father, and I am a wine lover for going out of the IT stuff and doing other stuff than work. Fortunately for us, the lockdown is over, so I do not have kids here at home. But when I told them that I'm going to do another event, they were so happy because they did like the puppies that this user group gave me in the last event. And I told them there will not be more puppies, but they asked me to say thank you to you guys. So this session is not about discussing what is your perfect tool, the tool that you like it. And you can use whatever you want, Beanstalk, Logic App, Service Bus. I'm not here to discuss what is the best or not. I'm here to talk about whether you can use Logic App, and especially talking about Logic App Preview. What are the difference between the Logic App and Logic App Preview, and the integration challenge that we are facing today, and how can we address them? So on integration challenge, we have three types of challenges nowadays. On-premise integration, still there are a lot of on-premise to on-premise integration. Hybrid integration, that is the most used at the moment, where they have small pieces in Azure and some of them on-premise, and cloud integration that is appear more often nowadays. So regarding on-premise integration, at the moment, what we have ready to production, let's say this way, we basically have a Logic App, Beanstalk server, that is the integration platform, Microsoft integration platform, and we can do a lot of ETL process using SQL and SQL integration service. Of course, we can use the cloud to do on-premise integration, but we are leaving the on-premise environment, go into cloud, and then you can use Azure integration service like API management, Logic App, Service Bus, IaaS environment to connect to on-premise again. Of course, to do that, we need VPNs, data gateways, or express route to do this connectivity between what is on-premise and what is in the cloud. Of course, behind that, there are a lot of things that you may need to use to do really enterprise integration, like integration account, data pipelines, functions, key vaults, SQL, you name it. There is a lot of stuff that you can bind together like a Lego system to do these in enterprise integration. And in the future, in the next short future, we have the Logic App that now calls Logic App Preview that will general availability in a few months probably. What this brings is that you can use the Logic App inside a Docker, Kubernetes app service. It can run locally in your machine, and they can do actually on-premise integration without leaving your on-premise systems. Okay. By doing hybrid integration, we'll have all of these that I already spoke here. So we can do a Beanstalk, we can use Logic App Preview, we can use Azure Integration Service, all binding together to do this hybrid integration. I mean, you don't need to use all of these pieces. You can select a few of them, but all of these are in your list of choice to select, okay? Now, if you do working on cloud integration, cloud integration, then we only have these Azure integration service that are the main topics about cloud integration. I mean, API management, Logic App, Service Bus, IaaS environment is your personal isolate environment with all of these. So normally these services are serverless, so they are shared between all of the customers and subscriptions. IaaS environment is isolated, is dedicated to you, okay? And of course, for doing enterprise integration, you may need a lot of Azure functions, key vaults to keep secrets, integration accounts to have B2B agreements, schemas, maps, and so on, event hubs, storage accounts, data factory to ETL process, app service. Sometimes you need to create that. You need to use API connections, Logic App, custom connectors, app configuration to work as a config file, let's say this way. You have web jobs, Kevlar jobs, and you have a lot of databases from SQL to Cosmos DBs. Is sometimes about your taste in the technology. You like better Cosmos DB than SQL DB. The client wants SQL DB because it feels comfortable with SQL and not Cosmos DBs. Or you want Cosmos DB because it's faster and less cost. Yeah, it has less cost. So it's a matter of sometimes of taste and requirements of the client. And of course, App Insights, log analytics, stream analytics, and Power BI for logging and dashboard. All of these tools are used to do cloud integration. And of course, with this Logic App Review, you can deploy this new type of Logic App in an app service on the cloud. So it can run on the cloud, on-premise, on a Kubernetes system, you name it, basically anywhere. But I'm speaking here about Logic App Review, and this is kind of a mess in terms of naming. And so what are the difference between a Logic App and what is now called a Logic App Review? But sometimes we call it Logic App version 2, okay? So Logic App are serverless. There is no computer base inside. They're 100% serverless service, and allows you to create automated workflows to integrate a system or applications. You pay for execution. So you orchestrate your tasks in a business flow to integrate application integration, data system integration, EAI, B2B, B2C, whatever you want, okay? And they can also run inside an IaaS environment. Again, the IaaS environment is a full isolated environment dedicated for enterprise scenarios when you need to scale in terms of thresholds, limit thresholds, and so on and so forth. You are not sharing this environment with no one. Is 100% dedicated to this to you, okay, or to your client. And you can still use the serverless service if you want. So you have the ability to use IaaS actions or serverless actions. So it's kind of a mix together. So Logic App Preview instead is a consumer-based service. Okay, it runs an app service. Consumption hosting are not support, but it runs an app service. So basically, it runs on a VM. It is paid by computer base in general, but you may have a lot of other additional costs, not only about the computing that it supports, but also about executions and connectivities. It allows you to create kind of a stateless and stateful workflows. So at the moment, the Logic App is stateful workflow. The Logic App that exists today in general ability is as a kind of a stateful workflows. So you know that if you execute a Logic App, it resists all the history and all the data that is inside the input output. That is what we are calling here as a stateful workflow. With this new Logic App, it has a concept of stateless and stateful. And the stateless is basically for scenarios that try and forget request response, that you need a fast call and you don't want to persist everything. So it's ideal for short runs, performance, fast performance, and quick response time. Okay. But what is a container business flow? Because basically a Logic App Preview is a container of flows. So the normal Logic App, well, you create a resource group, Azure resource group, and you start deployment and create your Logic App resource. And you add a new Logic App resource, and then you add additional resource to the same Azure resource group, like API management or service bus. And this resource group has all of these resources inside. With Logic App Preview, you still have a resource group that runs on the region, and then you create a Logic App Preview resource that acts as a container of Logic Apps inside, or your what now they call a workflow, stateful or stateless. So this new Logic App Preview is actually running on top of the Azure Function runtime. So it's kind of an Azure function. So you create your Azure Function resource or function app, and then you create functions inside that function app. Here is the same. You create your Logic App preview resource, and then inside you create all your workflows. And then you can create on the same resource group, of course, new Logic App previews, and inside that Logic App preview container, you create more workflows that are independent between all of this stuff. And then, of course, inside the same Azure resource, you create other type of Azure service like API management, service bus, and so on and so forth. So again, Logic App runs on top of Azure Function runtime. So whenever nowadays you are able to run functions, you can now run Logic App. You can containerize inside a Docker or Kubernetes environments, such as Azure Kubernetes Service or an app service on Azure, or inside your virtual machines locally. So basically, you can run everywhere, and this is the main capability that this new resource provides. So it's able to run anywhere that you want to use these this type of resource. You have a lot of good examples about using Keda and logic apps and so on and so forth. So again, what is new on this logic app review? Stateful and stateless workflows. Stateless, it's kind of a new stuff on this type of resource. You have a flexible hosting model because you virtually can put it running and select what type of hosting you want to use. And you can actually do a local development inside Visual Studio Code. Unfortunately, I think it's still only available for Visual Studio Code. There is no support for Visual Studio itself. I think they will have that on the roadmap, but not yet available. So it has a full logic app design capabilities. If you are familiar with the logic app, the normal logic app, the serverless logic app that you have today, it has full support for Visual Studio, but it doesn't have full support for Visual Studio Code. This is the other around. It has full support for Visual Studio Code, but it doesn't have support at all for Visual Studio at the moment. So you can actually create a local project that was not available with the serverless logic apps. You can use breakpoint debugging before and after an action, and you can run locally. So you can do all your developer locally inside your machine. You can test it inside your machine without deploying nothing to Azure, for example. And then you can, after everything is developed and testing, you can actually choose what kind of hosting model you want and just put it running there. It also has a new logic app designer. And it's a more compact designer. It makes it easier to work with bigger and large logic apps that can be bigger and very large if you do some conditional and switch operations inside. It can become very large, and you have a lot of scrolling that you can minimize, of course, using scopes. But you have in the serverless logic app, you have these big operations or action shapes that take a lot of space on the screen. And with this new design, it's more compact. It's more easier to read this kind of workflows. You can also create custom connector extension and run it locally and improve the throughput and low latency of the existing connectors. So you can build all of your custom connectors and avoid or work around some of the throughputs and threshold limits of the default connectors. If you are familiar with the serverless logic apps, it has kind of full support for JSON, but when you speak about XML, and there is a lot of enterprise integration using XML at the moment, it doesn't have full support inside the logic app. Okay, inside the logic app, it has operation to use XML validation or XML transformation like XSLT, but for you to use that, you need to have an integration account. And this integration account is quite expensive for what the benefit that it gives to you. This new logic app has built-in features of the integration account. You can use maps and schema directly with the new logic app resource without the need of using an integration account, which is quite awesome. You can also use, for example, inline code without using the integration account. And that also was need to do inline code inside the logic app, serverless logic app. So without delays, let's try to do some demos and show you in real case what I was speaking about. Let me share my VM. So this is actually my Beanstalk VM. I have Beanstalk here on premise. This is my dev machine, and I use my dev machine also to install everything that is needed to use the logic app. Before I'm going to the basics, let me show you this running, because sometimes this can this is a preview and can take a while to test it. But let me stop it. I hope it doesn't break nothing. So extensions here, you see that on Visual Studio Code, I have the logic app. This is the serverless extension, serverless logic app. This is the normal logic app extension. And now we have the new extension that is the Azure Logic App Preview. Of course, this needs to add also the some requirements locally that you need to add the Azure function runtime, storage account, Azure storage emulator that is running here at the moment, just to keep the history and all of these executions. So you need to have these requirements that you can find on the docs, and what everything you need to install it to put this running. And then you see that I have these types of where is my other logic app? It is here. So we have these two types of logic apps. These logic app preview, this logic app extension doesn't have full support for the designer itself. So you basically need to change all of the all you need to change. You need to do it in by code, not in the designer. The designer is just a read-only mode. I don't know if I have some here. So if I open the design here, this is the traditional, the serverless logic app. And this is my logic app review on the left. As you see, in terms of design layout, is more compact. So you have these big shapes, and here is quite small. So it can be easier to read large flows. And here again, it just preview. You cannot change nothing here, because this is read-only mode. If I want to change these, I need to go to my code, and then on the code, I need to make all of the change, and that's it. Let me close this one. Here, I have full support of my logic app. So my logic app designer. So I can go here and create a new header, for example. I can put here a different body. So all of these design functionalities is supported. Of course, I can always go to my code and do these changes and configurations on the inside the code. If I want to tuning something or changing some configurations, I can do it in the code. So let me see here. So what I have here is a logic app that receives a HTTP request. It does an XML validation, a transformation, and do a response. So in the serverless workflow, in the serverless logic app, basically I had the need to use an integration account to store the schema and the maps. Here, let me go to the code. Once you create a local project, you have this folder called artifacts, and here you have maps and schemas that you can upload your schemas and your maps and use internally in this logic app review. And these schemas and these maps are shared with all the workflows that are inside of this logic app review. Okay, so let me put it running, and I'm going. I didn't just did the developer on premise. I'm not deploying nothing to production. I'm just running everything locally, and so is actually put the runtime working, prepare everything in my machine to be able to run this workflow. Just take a second. And also you are in my local machine that sometimes is quite slow. See, the CPU is 100%. So now it says that it's running. Yeah, it's running. And of course, you may think, okay, what is the URL that I need to invoke to call this HTTP? And to know that, we can go to the workflow JSON and select overview. And you see that there is this URL here. And so basically, I'm going to copy that to my Postman. And basically, I'm going to send a XML message and receive a response back to my Postman. And I see here that is being triggered. It's, wait a second, let me pass these, because I'm going to speak that later. And if I'm lucky, I'm almost able to get the response, and I have here. So basically what I'm doing is just concatenation between my first name and last name and send it back to the caller. So simple stuff. But again, what I did was I sent an XML message, I validated message, so it's according to the schema, and I did the transformation using XSLT, and send it back to the source system. And you see that I have the XSLT here, so simple stuff. I'm just putting everything and getting the first name and last name, and do a concatenation and send it to the full name for the record B of the target schema. And I have here the schemas, so they are simple schemas. Unfortunately, you can use a bespoke schema, but you have to clean some of the stuff inside to be able to work directly on your logic app review. It's not 100% compatible. You have to clean at least some namespace to put that working. So let me close this stuff. Close this stuff, and here. The other thing is about breakpoint, and I talk about breakpoint, and you may saw this stopping here. So I can go to my workflow JSON, that is the code behind the designer, and I can put some breakpoints only on the beginning, on the end, and the end shape of the actions. Okay, it doesn't allow me to do breakpoints on the run after inputs and other stuff like that. I just am able to put before the action be executed and after being executed. And again, if I'm invoking the same request, I will be able to see that I am in breakpoint, okay? So what this give me is the ability to check what is going to be inside and after these actions. Unfortunately for us, and you can see it here on the variables. Unfortunately for us, it doesn't work very well with XML. You cannot actually see nothing inside the schemas and the transformations. But I have here another example. This is a simple one. It's using JSON. So I'm receiving a JSON. I'm composing, again, putting first name and last name in uppercase, and then doing a response back to the system. So if I'm again going, I mean, I'm still running, so I'm still in execution mode, going to the overview, and I will see that I have here my URL. Going back to the Postman, and here put the same, and then execute. This will stop in my breakpoint. And if I go into the next step here, and I go into my variables, I can see that inputs and outputs of these actions. Of course, again, it doesn't work 100% because the input was not Sandro Pereira in the uppercase. It was a lowercase, and then the output was the uppercase. But at least you have some kind of debugging capabilities that I hope they will improve in the next versions. So you can kind of have this ability to do some breakpoint and check at least what is entering and what is leaving the actions inside there. Of course, let me go here on the stateful workflow overview. You can always have, and if you are familiar with the Logic App serverless, you have this run history, and you can go inside the history of the execution and see what is entering and leaving the shapes and what is the flow execution. And you still have the same capabilities here, no? You just click and show the run, and if I'm lucky, I have the same again. So I have the screens green, and here I have the outputs of so this is what I receive on the HTTP request. I have the validation. I say that it was successful validate. And I have the transformation where I have the input and where I have the output here. That is in more different way, but you see it's still there, the output. And I have the response back. So I have the history and I have all of these vision about what is entering and what is leaving. This is a different way to do debugging, okay? But as I told you, here you have kind of a stateful that by default is the logic of the stateful workflows. It does all of this history by it's native. Okay, it's the same of the serverless. The stateful workflow in the other way doesn't show you the run, because again, this is what is supposed to be stateless. It doesn't persist all the data inside the storage account. Right? Let me check here again the overview of that. But as you see, my stateless workflow indeed has a history, and I can actually go and show the run. And as I see, I still have the same capabilities of the stateful workflow, despite this being a stateless workflow, okay? And I go to compose, I still have the same, and response, I still have the same. And the reason why is that you can actually configure for debugging purpose, and if you want, of course, you can configure to your stateless workflow to persist the data. So in this case, you go to the local settings. Yeah, I select the correct one. So this is here. So here on the local settings, I actually I can specify that my workflow stateless one, it is a stateless with run history. So what I'm telling here is that to basically transform my stateless in a stateful workflow and persist all the run history. Of course, you can enable and disable these whenever you want. Once you do all of these double checks, troubleshooting, and so on, you can remove it and become a stateless workflow to be faster. It doesn't persist nothing. Of course, in developer environment, you may want to have this kind of functionality. That being a beanstalk consultant from the last 15 years, this is kind of having the tracking settings of Beanstalk inside Logic App. In Beanstalk, we have the availability in runtime to select what I want to track and what kind of tracking I want, and enable and disable whenever I want. So in this case, I'm able to add tracking or remove tracking from a workflow. Let me clean that. Clean. Let me just stop it. And what else? So again, you have the workflow JSON that contains all the code inside your Logic App design. I can go here in tuning. I can always go and open by design. And you see here the design, I'm able to add actions if I want with the same look and feel of the Azure portal, for example. And I say here condition, so control, and I put in here the condition. You see the layout is quite small than the traditional one. And again, here based on the what I have here is okay, condition. I want if my output is equal to Sandro Pereira, then I can, example, let me put here is an operation. Delete action, and I put here the variable. Doesn't support variables. Azure. Also, some of the stuff is not yet available here. I never select the variable, but Let me check. Probably is not here. Well, I don't get data operations. No. Strange. Doesn't support variables. Wow. Okay. Doesn't care. I can delete, so I can put here a response type. I don't know if it go or not. Let me check response and say, okay, content type application JSON. And then here it's kind of, let me copy what is here. Content type per case. And let me try if I can do. Never tried this before. So request response again content type and say no. And if I save it and do a run, I may get a different result. Warming up. Again, but realize everything is on my machine. There is nothing deployed to the cloud yet. I don't have nothing on the cloud except the resource group created. And if I'm going to the overview, that it should be the same URL. Let me try that. And say Nino. There. Make it here a breaking point. Yeah, there was in the breaking point. And my response should be no, I'm not Nino. If I'm lucky, otherwise. Maybe an error. Okay, you saw the point. No need. I was just inventing some stuff with no sense inside the workflow. Let me terminate this. Okay. So in terms of this is the local project I have in the logic app review. I cannot create here, for example. I can create new files, but normally what I supposed to do is going to the plugin itself. Let me expand that. And then from here, you see that I have created a workflow and I have created a deploy to logic app. For example, these options. And there's reading. You see what we read first. No, I think I'm using the to delete. Not sure what I'm using at the moment. Let me check. But from here, I will get, for example, create a new workflow, and here you mention what type of workflow you want, stateful or stateless workflow, okay? And you give the name of the stateless workflow if you want that you want. Just making I'm using the first one. Stateless demo Azure global bootcamp. And this, if was correctly linked, it is, and you create a new resource group inside your new resource. New resource inside your local project. And from here, of course, you can now you cannot select the stateless demo name because it doesn't show the options. You always have to go to the workflow JSON and then from there do open in design. And then you have the full design here again, and you start creating your workflow and response. I'm not here to teach you how to create the logic inside the logic apps. It's just creating actions and put your business flow working. Of course, and I'm not going to talk here about that, you have deployment slots that you can use to deploy all your workflows to Azure, for example. Okay, I can come here, and if I want publish to my my logic app to my Azure environment that I have on the cloud running on the app service, I can do it by use this button here. And you can use deployment slots to control changing and entering and merging and all of this stuff. Otherwise, if you don't use this deployment slots and you deploy, you basically are deploying all your logic apps in once. So even if you only have one new or two new, then you still have like 5 there. It will deploy all of these again. It's basically Azure function behavior. In this case, using the logic app, because this fixture, this new preview is using the Azure function runtime behind. So if I'm sharing, let me see if I have here my portal. I don't know if I have something deployed there or not, but it's just for you. I was not intended to present this, but just for you to try to see. Let's see a logic app. Logic. Logic app. Oh, logic app preview. Let me see if I have my. So this is the behavior of creating a logic app preview inside inside the portal. You just select what kind of resource you want. I think I have here a logic app. Example of, let me go to my resource group. And I may have here a logic app preview. Yeah, have it here. And here I will have some kind of, honestly, I'm not coming here too often. Deployments, not really. Where are the workflows? Events. Well, I don't know. Again, I'm not coming here too often. I think I don't have nothing deployed here as a logic app, but you can actually create. Oh, there it is. I have something here for sure, but I don't know where. Maybe I didn't deploy yet the logic apps here. But again, you can create this logic app review from the portal, and you can actually create new workflows from the portal at the moment. But this is is a little different nowadays from what I knew before. Again, this is in preview. They maybe be changing this stuff. And basically, that was what I was intent to show you guys. I hope you have a overall overview perspective of this new logic app review and realize the difference between this one and the existing one. I think is a mess in terms of name, to be honest. Even to me, to try to speak about logic app review is kind of a mess. I hope the team will figure out some better names to distinguish these, because none of them will go away. We will still have the logic app serverless, and it will get this new logic app that runs anywhere, everywhere. Or they will have an idea to merge this together, and you can deploy it as a serverless or containers wise, but I don't think so. You will have these two types of resource in the future. So again, in terms of naming, it's a mess. I hope they will improve that, and I hope you enjoy the session.
There are right now 2 questions in the chat by Nino. The first one is, what is your roadmap? When it will be production ready? That's the first one.
I think it is in a couple of months. To be honest, I don't know if it's still public or not, but it is this year for sure.
Okay, and the second one is interesting. Is there a migration wizard from classic logic app and the new one?
Well, I don't know. Honestly, they are the same. The logic inside it is the same. I know that there is a plan to all of these different designs will be the same, because it doesn't make sense one design as one layout and the another as another different layout. It's just kind of a mess at the moment, because they are still working on the new design, and all of the changes are being done in this new logic app preview resource. At some point, they will have these two in the same look and feel, let's call it this way. And migrating from the serverless logic app to this new containerized in the Azure function runtime it will be quite easy because it's 100%, almost 100% compatible, if not 100%. Doing the same from logic app preview to serverless is probably different because, again, there are some key capabilities like inline code or XSLT maps and schemas that will not be supported, at least what I know for now, it will not support in Logic app without the integration account. But again, migration from one to other may be easier and automated. We just put stuff in the integration account, or remove that and put in the containerized version of the Logic app. So it will be easier to do that.
Okay, and another question by Nicolas. Maybe that's a classic question you often hear. Is the code available for download?
Is the code?
Yeah, it's one question by Nicolas. Maybe Nicolas, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask, or
if this code that I'm showing.
Yeah, the examples. I'm not quite sure if you have a GitHub repository which is accessible or not.
I don't have on GitHub, but I can put on GitHub without any problem. So Nicholas, I will get you back in soon to you, and I will give you the source code.
Okay, Nicholas, is that okay for you?
I think so.
Okay, so right on the mark, I would say. Sandro, thank you very much.
It was my pleasure.
It's great to have you again as a speaker here at our little virtual regional user group and during this Global Azure event. It was a pleasure again for us. That is Ben, Frank, and I, appreciate it very much. And if you like to spend a few more minutes, you can head over to the main stage because we want to spend a few more minutes there just to finish off. So just a small talk, having a chat.
Okay, I will.
Just if you like.
Yeah. Okay, see you guys. Bye-bye.
Okay.